welcome everybody to another glorious episode of the Put On Waivers podcast, the NFL version here. Dwayne Douglas along with Ryan Holmes. Ryan, how you doing today?
I'm doing good.
We have Tony Wiggins on. He, of course, is Locked On Jaguars podcast. The whole NFL draft starts in Jacksonville, in Duval, as far as that goes. Tony, how you doing today?
I'm great, man. How you guys doing? I'm glad to be with you.
We're happy to have you, man. That division of yours, before we get to the Jags real quick, I just want to ask you a question. Hey, the Colts, they make the trade for Carson Wentz. Ballard did a really good really good job with the rest of the squad, right? Does he push the button for you? Do you feel like it may make them the number one team in that division?
I wouldn't necessarily say that. What I will say, though, Ballard and Ed Dodds is number two. They have a lot of respect around the NFL, and they've done a real good job in terms of team building from where that roster was 2 or 3 years ago. So when you look at it from that perspective, you really have to give them their due and their respect and understand that even though I have my reservations about Carson Wentz, they go away a little bit because Frank Reich knows the kid, and he knows from being his quarterback coach in Philadelphia the buttons that he has to push in order to get the best out of him. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt until I see something else. But I'm not a huge Wentz guy, but I am a believer in Frank Reich, and I'm a believer in Ballard, and I really do like Ed Dodds, who some people believe was a candidate to be the GM here and some other places for a while. He pulled his name out of the hat in Carolina and went back, but he's an up and rising GM candidate. So I really like their infrastructure and the way that they're moving in order to try to build that franchise up. But right now, with the way that it still looks like Tennessee until somebody proves otherwise is the team to beat right now in the division.
Yeah. You look at what you see. You see the Raider logos in the back. So Ryan and I are Raider fans. We have a GM who basically does what John Gruden wants. Do you see Trent Baalke doing the same thing here with your head coach? I mean, it seems like he has the full carte blanche to do whatever he wants.
This is Urban Meyer's team. This is Urban Meyer's direction. It's Urban Meyer's vision. They got this is, I'm sort of being sarcastic here. They got 74 guys on the coaching staff. So, you know what I'm saying? This is all about, Urban's vision. Urban sold Shad Khan on a vision, and they went with Trent Baalke for whatever reason. And Urban is comfortable with that. But no, they make no mistake about it. While Trent Baalke does have a role in his Urban is going to use him, and he's an important person. Don't get it twisted. He's an important person because he has NFL experience. Everything that they do is going to have Urban Meyer's fingerprint on it. So this is all about him. This is all about what he wants. And I don't suspect that you'll have any of the problems that you have heard that Baalke probably had with Jim Harbaugh out in San Francisco.
Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah, on that point, the coaching staff. Tell me about the decisions. Darrell Bevel was in Detroit, but then Joe Cullen coming over to be the DC. He's never called plays. He's been a defensive line coach. How do you see those guys fitting in, especially on the defense? 'Cause it's going to be very young.
It is going to be young. Urban talked about Cullen. He mentioned that he wanted to hire Cullen at several other stops, but he never actually had the chance to. That they'd had conversations when he was at Florida. They had more conversations when he was at Ohio State, but he couldn't ever really find the right fit. And I guess because Urban had an affinity for the way the Baltimore Ravens, the Ravens played defense, and the way that the Ravens operated, he wanted some of that in his program. And so he went and got Wink Martindale's second in command, and it happened to be someone that he was very, very familiar with in Joe Cullen. Now, I think what helps that is this. He brought Charlie Strong in as his second in command and his assistant head coach. Now, Charlie's going to coach inside linebackers, but Charlie's a guy who, while he doesn't have NFL experience, has been a head coach in college and was Urban's defensive coordinator at University of Florida also. So there is a little bit of lateral movement here. If you think you can be the head coach at University of Texas, you could probably be the defensive coordinator in the NFL. So the reason why I think it'll work is because Joe Cullen is very, very respected. Uh, Most of the time when you see guys get jobs as defensive coordinators, they usually come from the linebacker or from the back end. Uh, Joe Cullen comes from the defensive line, and that's fine. And the last defensive coach they had here, the last coordinator they had here, Todd Wash, actually got promoted from the defensive line. That didn't work so well, but when you look at it from an overall standpoint, I do think with the addition of Charlie Strong, that kind of helps Urban have the confidence in the fact that the defense will be in good hands.
Okay, it sounds like they're going to a 3-4 front. Do they have the pieces there defensively, especially in the linebacker core and on the edge? I know Chason probably fits there, and obviously Miles Jack, but do they have the pieces to put together a defense that can fly around year one?
Miles is a little bit of a question because he struggled at Mike linebacker, but what I think they're going to do with him is what you saw Tampa do with Levante David, who's really a traditional will linebacker, and they kind of used him next. You can have a Mike, and then you kind of, and I think that's what they do with Miles Jack and Joe Shaw do. They have the pieces up front to be. I talked to Charlie Strong I didn't talk to him, but I asked him a question, what their fronts were going to be. He said they were going to be multiple. And it sounds as if what they're going to do is they're going to be a 3-4, or, some people call it a 5-2, but sometimes they'll have a 4-man front sometimes, but I think it's a base 3-4. So what you're going to do is you're going to see Josh Allen, who was their first round pick in 2019, probably stand up along with Kayvon Chason or whoever they bring in free agency. If you watch Baltimore last year, and Urban has mentioned he's mentioned Baltimore by name more than once. When you watch Baltimore, they had guys rotating left and right. They had Yannick Ngakoue and Judon and McPhee and all of these guys. They had so many guys you forget the name. And those guys were actually signaling each other. They were communicating with each other, taking each other in and out of the game. And because they were basically stunting and blitzing and dropping off so much is that they were wearing each other out. So they rotated a lot. So what you'll see in this situation is you're probably going to see them play 4 different guys at those rush-in positions. So I suspect that what they're going to do is probably add a guy in free agency, and they're going to add another guy in the draft at some point before round 4. And they're going to have depth. Look, they were 1-15, and you can't sit there and just think that just because you got 2 guys that were picked in the first round that you're okay at those positions, because you were 1-15. You can't take that for granted. And both of those guys didn't play well last year. So what you're going to see is, I think what you're going to see is them add different types of bodies up front, but they're definitely equipped and they're off to a pretty good start as far as having the type of people that you need in order to run a 34 defense. Is
the controversy or whatever that dealt with Chris Doyle, is that gone now? Like, was that like, is that under the rug now? They're not worried about that?
No one's talking about it anymore. The only sense that they're talking about it in is the fact that, Urban was a little arrogant and trying to pull it off, with the fact
a little bit
with the fact that he was like, trust me. Well, it's like, no, you had that thing up there with Coach Smith of Ohio State with plausible deniability, so we can't really trust you. Nice move today. I don't know. I can't really pronounce her last name. I don't want to butcher it, but Amy, her last name begins with a P. She was the senior executive who was let go in Houston. She's now, it was just announced about an hour ago, she's going to be in charge of communication here with the Jaguars. And everyone is, I even tweeted Amy Trask a little while ago, and she was like all happy about it because a lot of people were upset in Houston that lady was let go because she was such a well thought of executive in Houston. Well, I think it's Patrick, if I'm not mistaken. I don't want to screw it up, but out of respect for her, but they hired her. The thing with Doyle is this. He wasn't the strength and conditioning coach. They have a strength and conditioning coach. He was a guy who the strength and conditioning coach, the nutritionist, and the training staff was going to report to, and he was going to report to Urban Meyer. they could have very well has hired him as a consultant who just popped in here once a week and gave Urban a report and not put him on the rolls, and no one would ever know. The thing is, by them trying to put him on the staff, that's what caused the problem. So it was a miscommunication and it was a gaffe, and they got it straightened out. And Urban learned real quick that the NFL is not college. A college coach kind of runs the entire thing, and people kind of move to his beat. The NFL is no can do. Like Hall & Oates said, that's not the way it works.
Hall & Oates reference here on the On Waivers podcast. Blake Bortles, that whole situation is gone. But when they got Bortles, they did draft pretty well. They got some really impact players there. You got Lawrence definitely coming in. There's no question about it. There's not even a second guy you can even think about. What do you feel like? You just watched the Super Bowl where the defensive and offensive lines really dominated. Is that where they should go as far as building that team?
Yeah, you got to take care of the trenches, man. And the offensive line isn't bad. It's not porous. The first thing that you would think with a team that's 1-15 is that the offensive line needs to be totally revamped. And that's absolutely not true here. You might need to add a piece or two. You need 8 guys that can play. And I think they got like 5.5 or 6, maybe one starter or maybe two at the most. But the thing is they got some good pieces here. The problem with Blake Bortles, you're right, they did get pieces, but some of those pieces were built around him to hide him. The biggest thing about Bortles is they had a chance on multiple occasions. Let me tell you who they could have picked. When we all knew he couldn't play, but they kept trying to build him up and hide him. So they drafted Leonard Fournette because they needed a running game. They could have drafted Deshaun Watson. They could have drafted Patrick Mahomes, but they didn't. The following year, after they went to the playoffs, they could have drafted Lamar Jackson. They didn't. They took Taven Bryan. They extended Blake Bortles. The problem is they kept trying to mask the fact that he was not a good thrower of the football, and eventually it all blew up. Now, what they need to do with Trevor Lawrence is they need to take advantage of the fact that they have the most salary cap and they got a boatload of draft picks. Don't ignore the trenches. Don't get too excited with a whole bunch of skill position players. I did a mock free agency because I wanted to get to the mock draft, but it was hard to get to the mock draft without doing a mock free agency. And it's hard to do a mock free agency until you get the staff in place to try to align the players that you're going to pick with the staff and what their philosophy is. And the hard events people here is that just because you're familiar with the players on the roster, it doesn't mean that they're all okay. You got to remind them that they're 1-15. You know what I'm saying? If you leave it up to Jaguar fans, they only think you need one tight end, one offensive lineman, one defensive lineman, and maybe a safety, and then we're ready to go. That's not true for a 1-15 team. So some of these positions where they think they're set, they're not going to be set because this new staff and this new regime is not tied to anyone who was drafted here before. They're going to upgrade. They're going to upgrade.
No question about it.
I think the first thing to do with Lawrence is to try to get a security blanket. I like Chenault. I like Chark. They have Robinson. Maybe if they could go get a Hunter Henry, or if they could find a way, I don't know how they're going to do it, but trade up and maybe get Kyle Pitts to give him a tight end that he can have easier reads with, and kind of even use Pitts like the Raiders use Waller. Just give him another weapon and then just build the lines. Because like you said, they have 2 wide receivers. They have a running game. So.
Yeah, well, the one thing about it is if you look in free agency, like with the mock I did, Curtis Samuel, who played for Urban, they need speed. They need a slot guy. All of their receivers are like 6'2" or bigger. They need a slot guy. Curtis Samuel played for Urban at Ohio State as a weapon, right? So there's your slot guy. Jonnu Smith is in the division, who is a Aaron Hernandez size type wide receiver who's a real good red zone threat at Tennessee. There's your tight end right there, right? So when you get to free agency first, the tight ends coach they hired from Penn State. Guess who plays at Penn State? Pat Freiermuth, right? And the Jaguars have the 25th pick and the 33rd pick. So you're looking at it. I don't even know if they're going to trade it for Pitts because I think Pitts is going to be gone by pick 10 maybe. And I think that's too much capital to give up and move up for him. But, yeah, you're right. A safety valve, someone to dump the ball off to someone he could get the ball out of his hand really, really quick. You're absolutely right. And with the addition of Schottenheimer and, of course, Darrell Bevell, you're talking about West Coast principles. And what do they do? 3-step drop, 5-step drop, get it out to the tight end, 12 personnel. You're right. So that's a very good observation. And might be a couple of guys that they're familiar with.
Get this going.
Or Detroit, that's available that they're very familiar with, that they can bring in. That'll be a safety valve. He can get out of training camp. He can help them a little bit.
All right. Listen, you can find Tony Wiggins at Shop Talking Wig on Twitter, also on Locked On Jaguars and Locked On NFL. Just does a great job. Everything Duval, he knows it. So if you get lost, want something to find something to eat, tweet at him. He'll hook you up. I appreciate the time, man. And the Jaguars are gonna listen.
That's right, man.
The guy is we know how good he is, and he should be great in teal for a long time. Trevor Lawrence.
Well, I really, really appreciate that. And if you guys do hit me up, if you catch me on a bad day and I say something bad to you, man, don't worry about it. And I won't block you. I just sometimes I get in a little bit of a pissy mood, but I'll be all right. I appreciate you guys having me on, man. And I really do. I'll reciprocate it and I'll have you on too. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Take
Thanks,
care.
Tony.
Man. No problem.
All right, bro.
We're back on the Put On Waivers podcast, NFL. Dwayne Douglas here, along with Ryan Holmes. The Colts, I tell you, when you see the shot of Carson Wentz coming off that plane, he was running. He could not wait to get out of Philadelphia, boy. I tell you, I mean, it's not even, it's part of it is his doing. If he played well, he'd still be there, but he didn't play well at all. Probably, I mean, people talked about it. He was like one of the worst. When you watch it on film, it's some of the worst quarterback play in the National Football League was by Carson Wentz last year. I think this is a situation where, like, obviously he could get better quickly. The team is ready-made, but this job doesn't come without pressure. I know people just say game manage. Like, you can't really – it's hard to get away with that in the National Football League. Like, you have to – this team is built for explosive plays and a team that's built to go to the AFC Championship game. Right, Ryan?
Oh, absolutely. They had a lot of cap room. They've had it for a while, and they just ate probably over half of that up just to bring in Carson Wentz. So they're really young around him. They have Michael Pittman, who's young. Paris Campbell's young. They're going to lose T.Y. Hilton probably in free agency. They might lose a tight end. I believe Mo Cox is a free agent. Probably going to lose Marlon Mack, but they have Jonathan Taylor. Mm-hmm. They need a left tackle. So there are some pieces they do need to put around him, but he's not going to have a lot of veteran weapons to go to. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on him. He has a good line there. And if he starts faltering the way that this trade is done with that conditional second-round pick that can turn into a first, this might be a 10 or 11-week audition. Yeah. If he's getting close and they're not in the playoff hunt and they're at the risk of losing a first-round pick, he could very easily go to the bench for the last 4 or 5 games so they don't hit that 70% or 75% snap clause in that deal. To activate that first-round pick, because Chris Ballard's not going to go down and give that up if he's not going to the playoffs. So I see this more as about a 10-week audition. Colts are really the only team in on him just because of the relationship he has with Reich. But I think a lot of people are just penciling him in. He's got a lot to prove. He played really bad, like you said, in Philadelphia this year.
He was bad, and he was bad. One of the stats that really kind of disturbed me the most, and why you can see it on film in all 22, is that he was one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL, Ryan, with a clean pocket.
Oh yeah. He had the most turnovers in the league, and he only played 12 games.
That is horrible. I mean, you have a clean pocket and you still can't make the play. I mean, he doesn't talk to his head coach for 8 weeks. Like that is not. I mean, that's a little bit of an entitlement kind of thing. He's supposed to be. I came from North Dakota State, tough guy, winter, all this stuff like that, and it just seems like it's not really. Not really the case here. But I mean, he didn't like when somebody was behind him. And I think that really bothered him. He didn't take the Aaron Rodgers approach saying, "Oh, you're really going to waste a draft pick on Jordan Love? Watch this." Like, you know what I mean? So it's kind of crazy.
It wouldn't surprise me if the Colts went out and took a quarterback as well in this draft, because they have to prepare that if he's not the answer, to have another guy ready in the next year or two. So they could very easily take a quarterback in the second or third round. And not because I don't think they're going to go out in free agency and invest in a backup quarterback and spend, $5 to $10 million, because that's going to eat up a lot of cap room that they don't have anymore after bringing Wentz over. But it's like I said, it's probably a 2-year at best, because he's going to be there for at least 2 years. How the cap is going to work, but they're not going to give up that first round pick if they don't make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, if they're not 7-3, like you said, it's not happening. They're 500. Forget about it. They're going to move on. Peterson goes, Wentz goes. How does Howie get to stay? Like, I'm just trying to figure out what goes on in Philadelphia. Does he have some pictures of the owner? I don't know. Like, I mean, I'm not trying to be funny, but like, as far as that go, like, how does he get a chance to stay? Usually when they do this, they call it splitting the baby, right? When you get rid of, you don't want to get rid of the GM. You get rid of both of them. You don't get rid of the GM and you don't split them up. What are your thoughts about Roseman? This has to be his like absolute last build with the Eagles. There's no way he can. If they probably strip it down now, because as you saw, Ashland Jeffries got cut today as well. Once this teardown comes, if they're not a perennial winning team, that's just you got to forget about it.
It's tough. It's about building relationships for people in those positions to run these franchises. That they become basically best friends and confidants of the owners. So he's in tight with Jeffrey Luria, and he can convince him to keep him around. You see the same thing with Jack Easterby in Houston, and it's happened. It's been that way in professional sports, and in every professional sport, you always have that one or two situations where the guy in charge is just so close and has the relationship with the owner. And we're talking about multi-billionaires. It's hard to get in that inner circle, and once those guys are in, they do whatever they can to hold on. But you're right. Eventually, they're going to have to turn it around. They're going to have to win. If they put together, 2 bad seasons in a row, I don't see how Howie Roseman can hang on.
Yeah, there's no way. So nobody's going to pay Roethlisberger $50 million a year. Pittsburgh is definitely not doing that. No. Whatever it is. So here's is it crazy? Like, let's just say Houston says no, not trading him. Not trading Watson. They're just going to keep him. Does Pittsburgh just say to themselves, hey, we're just going to restructure your deal or get a new contract, and this is what has to happen. Otherwise, they're just going to cut Ben Roethlisberger? Is that a possibility? Or,
I believe it is a possibility. They're in a tough spot because they don't have any cap room. And he's kind of holding them hostage, but you can't bring him back at that $41 million cap number.
They can't function as a team that way.
But you don't want to push it into future years with guarantees and restructure. That's what they've always done. And this is a team that has a defense that can win now, but they also have to look the other way. They have to pay TJ Watt. They have to pay Minka Fitzpatrick. They're going to have to make a decision on Bud Dupree. It looks like they're not going to be able to bring him back. They're going to lose Dupree. They're going to lose Juju Smith-Schuster. They might lose both of their right tackle and their left tackle. I don't know if Villanueva or Filer's coming back. So this team on offense is at a huge crossroads with a defense that's ready to win now. But if Roethlisberger hits the open market, I don't know how many teams are going to line up for a 39, 40-year-old quarterback the way he played the last 6 games of the season. So he might end up I know he doesn't want to retire, but I don't think he's going to take a backup job anywhere. So he may have to do whatever Pittsburgh tells him and take a lower salary.
Broncos?
I don't see the Broncos doing that. And it's just another 1-year rental, and you're running it all. Yeah, they're not going to win with Roethlisberger. So I just don't see a fit for him when you look around the league. There's just so many young quarterbacks.
Yeah. Everybody's just breaking up a little bit. All right. The Bears. What the hell could the Bears possibly do in this situation? They're talk about a team that's stuck. I mean, it's if you're the Raiders, like, do you call them and say Mariota is here? Like, this is the best quarterback option you're gonna have, and you trade for Mariota and see what happens. I mean, because I think the Raiders probably like to trade Mariota to the Bears rather than the Patriots, right?
Yeah, you like to get him. Not that it's a matter if he stays in the AFC, but you like to get him to the NFC. He's mobile. He fits kind of what Matt Nagy wants to do. It makes sense. I don't know if the Bears are going to have the cap room to bring him in on the current contract he has. They might just wait it out and let him make the Raiders release him and not have to give up capital.
Yeah.
The Raiders are in a tough spot. I don't see a lot of options for him because teams know that they're not going to carry him at $10 million as a backup. They're going to have to release him if they don't move him.
They can't do it. No question about it. Speaking of the Raiders, the news that the Raiders might be doing a extension with Carr is something that you feel like could help them improve the team around him, especially defensively. If that cap number can get lower, give him more guaranteed money.
I think the way you would structure that is you'd try to lower this year's cap number by putting voidable years on it and not really extending him. You could basically guarantee his salary for this year, put a couple of voidable years on. You're going to take a cap hit in 2 years if you want to move on from him. I don't think they're in a position where you can extend him, give him $30+ million over a 5 year, 130, $150 million extension, because now you're tied to the guy for the next 5 or 6 years. So I think if they do extend him, it's going to be more of lower this year's cap number, put some voidable numbers on the back end of this, and maybe guarantee his salary for this year and next year and still make a 2-year commitment to him, but trying to lower the number this year so they can add pieces around him. I don't think the Raiders are ready to tie themselves to him for 7 years or anything like that.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think they're going to do that. And Michael Pittman has already said that he's not giving Carson Wentz number 11, which I thought was pretty funny. That he didn't.
Yeah, I saw that.
And he's gonna. To me, that says you got to earn it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think, if Aaron Rodgers was coming and he was saying that I want number 11, well, let's work something out, I think Michael Pittman would give it up, but not for Carson Wentz. Like, I don't think he would do that. Going back to Philly,
Chris Godwin gave 12 to Tom Brady.
Yeah, with the quickness.
We're not doing it for Carson Wentz.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Going back to Philly, they keep talking about they missed out on Russell Wilson, and they felt like, the quarterback they have now has some of those traits. Going into the draft, you read all the Philly papers, whatever. They still talking about them going after a quarterback in the draft still. Could that be just like, you feel like that's smoke? Or they're going to give Hurts a real opportunity to be the starter going forward in 2021?
I think it's more smoke because you got to see what you have in Hurts. You took him in the second round. If you bring a quarterback in at number 6, it's going to be tough because obviously you're going to feel pressure to play him. I think they give him either protection. They either take a lineman or a wide receiver to help out Hurts. Because if Hurts goes out and it doesn't work, you might be in a position next year to take another quarterback. But you got to give Hurts at least a year to try to prove it. Trade
back possibility if a quarterback drops too as well, right? We're there at 6 in the draft.
Possibly, but I think they're staring right at Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith, or Jalen Waddle. One of those 3 guys is going to be there, or even Kyle Pitts. So they're going to have a chance to choose weapons.
How about what Devontae Smith said about the quarterbacks at Alabama? Did you find that interesting?
I don't buy too much into that. I mean, he obviously won the Heisman Trophy this year with Mac Jones, so I wouldn't read too much into that. He's just hyping up his guy from this year. Tua's already been picked and been paid. So,
can I tell you about my Raider idea?
Sure. What do you got?
All right. So here it is. I was watching old Gronk, Aaron Hernandez stuff, right? Already got Waller. Okay. Got Foster Moreau, whatever. I like Foster Moreau a lot. Zach Ertz. Wouldn't he be cheaper than bringing in another wide receiver, right? You get valuable time for Ruggs, Brandon Edwards, and then you can do a lot of two tight end stuff. You can get creative there. If you want an extra wide receiver, you can throw Waller out, split him out wide. He's capable of doing that. Slants go. I mean, he can run the whole. He can run the whole tree. And then he also gives you a large target in the red zone for Carr.
It's a possibility with John Gruden. You never know. He loves tight ends. At some
Much
point,
better,
he probably had 7 or 8
much
on the
better
roster
than
last year.
Witten. Much better than Witten, right?
Yeah.
Much better than Witten.
I personally wouldn't do it. I think you're fine with Moreau. I don't think you need to bring, because Ertz is going to have a cap number of $8 or $9 million, I believe. So I mean, between him and Waller and Moreau, you're looking at $20 million possibly tied into the tight end position. But
What?
I still think they should just invest in the defense.
Yeah, no, I agree. What is the issue with what was really the issue with, was it just like really just a relationship thing again, where John had a great relationship with Mark Witten? Is that the reason why he played so many more snaps than Foster Moreau? Because the Foster Moreau was really, I mean, everybody talks about high pointing the ball, right? And we saw that in that Colts game a couple of years ago, right? That high point in the corner, right corner of the end zone. But he's good at he's great at low pointing the ball too. If you throw one that's really hard and low, where it's going to be an incompletion or a completion to your tight end, he's great at that as well. So what was the mix up as far as that goes? It seemed like it was just like a weird dynamic for this team.
Yeah, Gruden's just going off of memory, 5-6 years in the Monday night booth, watching Jason Witten catch touchdowns in the red zone. I think a lot of it was they had red zone issues last year, and he thought that, if I bring in Jason Witten, that's going to help us. But not realizing the type of player Jason Witten is at this point in his career. He's nowhere near the player he was 5 or 6 years ago. And most of his snaps came in the red zone, but he did get some snaps in some pass blocking situations where they wanted an extra blocker in a 6-man protection, and when they had Waller split out. But again, we've been over that. I think Foster Moreau's development could have been stunted there, and there was really no reason to play Witten. Once you saw early, the first couple of weeks, that it just wasn't going to work. But Gruden just kept hitting his head against the wall and kept trying to force it, and it got worse. Disaster. We got down the last 4 or 5 games of the season.
So we're in the same kind of we're in the same Twitter chat. So I've talked about this before, and I want to hear your thoughts about it on the show. I just feel like the Panthers are just a prime spot for Watson. I just really feel like they are. They're just a really good spot for him. I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know what it means that Bridgewater has unfollowed. That's what we do now. I think you and I are like a little old school as far as like football goes. Yeah. He unfollowed his employer, so now everybody's trying to put 2 and 2 together. But I think it gets him out of, number one. It gets Watson out of the AFC. I think if you trade Watson, you don't want to trade him into the AFC, in the AFC, right? I mean, because you don't want to you just don't see him as much. So you would trade him to Carolina. That division is completely in flux. I mean, it's completely in flux. They could, if they want to offload some salary, maybe they can offload some salary, and they might want McCaffrey back in return. Who knows how that whole situation would go? But I think that's a really good. They have a owner who, Tepper is already wanting to win now. Like he had one season, he wants to win now. What are your thoughts about him? If Watson does go somewhere, maybe Carolina being a good spot for him.
That's an ideal landing spot. If they move him, they're definitely going to move him to the NFC. They're not going to trade him into the AFC. You have a coach there in Matt Rule who had a 7-year contract. So he has 6 years. He has a ton of stability. Like you said, David Tepper has a ton of money. He wants to win. They're releasing guys right now. They're creating cap room. They could easily create more if they need to. They'd probably be willing to trade multiple number 1 picks for Deshaun Watson. I think it's a good fit. He went to Clemson, and he would be going to Charlotte, so he's not very far away. from where he went to school. He's used to that area. He's used to the South. Like you said, the division's in flux. There's no more Drew Brees. Maybe a year, maybe 2 years of Tom Brady. And then Matt Ryan's probably got a couple years left and he's out. So the Carolina could very easily in the next 2 or 3 years with Deshaun Watson be the best team in that division.
Atlanta, they're very interesting to me because I feel like, they have talent on the team. So it's not like they don't, I mean, their salary cap makes it impossible for them to make moves. What are your thoughts about, like, hey, if you were coach is Arthur Smith, right? If you were him, do you kind of say, hey, where we are in the draft, we can get a pretty sweet player, or we could trade back. Let's hold off on that quarterback right now, because we're in a situation here where we can be fantastic. If my offense takes off, if I can get solid play from my defense, it's us and Tom Brady in the division. Nobody else is around.
It's tough when you pick in the top 5 of the NFL and you're staring at 3 or 4 quarterbacks, and you have a 35-year-old quarterback making the money Matt Ryan's making with a rookie head coach.
It's hard.
I think you almost just have to take the quarterback, because you might not be picking there again. But you can play devil's advocate here. Let's say Matt Ryan's there 3 more years, and then it falls apart, and he's 38 years old, and your coach is in year 3, and you have to start over with a new quarterback. Are you going to trust that coach to do it, or are you going to bring in a new coach with a new quarterback? So I think you need to tie Arthur Smith to a quarterback, whether that's Fields or Wilson or Lance, and if they have to sit a year on the bench, that's fine. Matt Ryan's going to be 36 years old this year. Mm-hmm. So I just think when you pick that high, you have to, if there's a quarterback there and you have a guy that's 35, 36 years old, you just have to do it.
Do you say they go out there and get one of these quarterbacks? Do you sit them for a year, or do you call the Broncos or call one of these call the Bears and say, hey, what would you want to give us for Matt Ryan?
Absolutely. You can still play Matt Ryan this year. And if he has a decent year and leads them to 8-8, 9-7 record, and the quarterback's playing well in practice and showing you that he can be the guy, then you move him next year for capital and you get, a second-round pick for Matt Ryan or a third-round pick or whatever it's going to be. I just don't think you can stay with Matt Ryan for another 2 or 3 years, and then because you're going to have to replace him, and there's no guarantee they're going to be in a spot. They're guaranteed to get a quarterback at 4 this year. Yeah. Whichever one they want. There's 4 that are going to go probably in the top 10 or 12. So they can have them. They don't really need Sewell. The only other option for them is either trade back, like you mentioned, or take a wide receiver, but they have wide receivers.
They got plenty.
They got plenty of those guys. So there's no one that really fits what they need.
They could use the trade one away. If they could trade Julio Jones to somebody, not the Raiders.
No.
Please no. But if I was them, I'd make that phone call. He wouldn't be a Steeler wide receiver. So as far as that goes,
no.
As far as that goes, but yeah,
no, he wouldn't.
So, do you think this could be a possibility of 4 straight quarterbacks? Right.
There is a possibility. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there. Does Jackson or Jeffrey, either Eagle receiver, have anything left?
Jeffrey, I'm going to say no. Just he's never been able to run and he can't stay healthy now.
Yeah.
The best thing he is probably just a red zone target that plays in certain packages. I think Deshaun Jackson still has something left. He can still run, and he's still a threat when he's on the field. The matter is, can he stay healthy? So if you get him to the right team where he doesn't have to run, 50, 60 routes a game, if you can get him in 25 or 30 plays and run routes against certain coverages that are good for him and put him on a good team, he can still be productive. Is he ever going to be 1,000-yard wide receiver and take the top off consistently? Probably not. But he could be a good fit somewhere. He can help a team.
Yeah, let's see how that goes there. Anything else you want to kind of dive into before we head out?
No, I just, I think it was good to talk to Tony about the Jaguars a little bit there, because they're going to be a different team next year. We think of them as, a 1-15 team, but that team could very easily, if they make the right moves this year, they could win 7 or 8 games. My only concern, and we talked about, is just the coordinator choices. You bring in these big name coaches. John Gruden's coming back. We all got excited, and you hired Paul Gunther and Greg Olson. not exactly earth-shattering. Urban Meyer comes in, and you're thinking he's going to bring in all of these coordinators that have all this success, and they're just going to win. And he brings in Darrell Bevell, who I'm not a fan of, and Joe Cullen, who's never run a defense. I know he was in Baltimore, but he's never run a defense. So those hires are interesting to me. I don't know what that says about Gruden and Urban Meyer, but I had higher hopes for the coordinators when Urban Meyer got hired than those two guys.
I'm just concerned about Urban Meyer, to be honest with you. I mean, first of all, the decision choice, bringing in Doyle was like, that was just like, why was it even worth your trouble? Number one. And just is he going to I mean, if you're in year 3 and it ends, you got some talent on the team, you drafted okay, and you're 8-8, you're not feeling that success. I mean, a lot of college players talk about it. A lot of great college players talk about it. Is like, the one thing that is tough to deal with is the losing in the NFL, because even if you're on a really good team, you're going to lose. Some of these guys lose like 4 games a year, 4 games in their career when they come.
Yeah, this isn't Ohio State. He doesn't get the cream of the crop 5 stars where he can dominate. Exactly. He's in a division where he's going to have to compete with Tennessee, who's going to be good for the next 3 or 4 years.
Exactly.
Foreseeably. They have the pieces in place. And in Indianapolis, Chris Ballard and Frank Reich have shown if that Carson Wentz trade works out for them, there's a chance that, 3 or 4 years into this, the Jaguars haven't made the playoffs and Urban Meyer just says, I'm good, and he's out.
And I'm not in love with Houston at all, but Houston, whether they keep them or whether they're going to be desperate to try to be good, because they look like the laughing stock of the league right now. Last thing before we go, I know why is we don't know where he might go. What are your thoughts about where he might end up going? Because I mean, it has to be a good team, and Cleveland might be a spot. A quarterback who doesn't necessarily have that big contract yet. What are your thoughts about J.J. Watt?
I think he ends up in Tennessee, playing for Vrabel, who was his DC in Houston.
That makes sense.
It's on a playoff team. They need defense. Green Bay, obviously, he's from up there. I think he wants to go to Pittsburgh. They just can't make it work financially. But in Buffalo, I still think has a good chance. They need defensive line help. They could play him at strong side end. They have a quarterback, Josh Allen, on a rookie deal. They were in the AFC Championship game.
Good defensive coach in Buffalo.
Yeah. I think he's going to end up in Green Bay, Tennessee, or Buffalo, one of those 3 spots. Yeah, and it won't be Las Vegas. I know a lot of Raider fans are hoping for that, but I just don't see the fit.
Listen. No. Here's the thing: when you don't put yourself in position to get any of these guys, that's what happens. 8-8 is this was year 2, 8-8. You might have a chance, but not right. No, not back to back. Basically back to back 8-8 years or 7-9, whatever. That's not gonna happen. They need to. It sounds like the Raiders are going to stay pat and hope better coaching prevails. Is that what you're feeling? You're kind of getting? I don't see.
Yeah, I think they make us. I could see him going out and getting one defensive player, maybe a free safety or a defensive lineman, spend some money there. I just don't think, it's not a Christmas shopping list where they're going to go sign 4 big. They're not getting Leonard Williams. They're not getting, the top safety on the market, Justin Simmons. They're not getting those guys. But if they can get a free safety and then, maybe add Melvin Ingram on a cheap 1-year deal and then add maybe a piece or 2 in the draft, I still think Gruden's going to spend some of these early picks on offense. As much as we talk about wanting to build the defense, I just think that he's going to go, I need another running back. I need another swing tackle. I need another receiver, whether that's a slot guy or an outside guy.
This is like Al Davis. It's like having Al Davis here. Oh my God.
The key to this is Trent Brown. If Trent Brown is still on the roster, then I see that first round pick going to the defensive side. If Trent Brown is not on the roster, and there's really no options of free agency for right tackles, they're going to take a tackle in the first round, whether Raider fans like it or not.
No question about it. Hey, listen, they were wrong about Colton. So hopefully, if they do make a tackle, it's a good tackle draft. If they do make that choice for tackle, hopefully it's a good one. Hey Ryan, thank you for joining us here, man. See you next time. Take care.
All right, thank you. Have a good night.
Yeah.